It gives me a great pleasure in welcoming you all, members of Crafts Council of Tamil Nadu, members of Crafts Council of India, and other state councils, also staff from Textile Department of PhD College and Avanashingam University and DJ Academy, for today's webinar on History and Revival Efforts of Baluchari Wheel by Mrs. Darshan Shah of Weaver Studio. We are extremely happy, Mrs. Darshan Shah, to have you with us today, and we are also very honored and privileged to have you here and to share with us your journey and experience to the revival of Baluchari. A very dynamic person, and she has lots to her credentials and has lots of stories to share with her, interesting stories to share with us today on her journey through Baluchari revival. I do not want to take much time. Our Secretary Rupa Mohandas will do a detailed introduction on Darshan Shah. And thank you once again, Mrs. Darshan Shah, and looking forward to your presentation. Now let me hand over to Rupa to take over the proceedings.
Thank you, Mrs. Akhila. Our guest speaker today, Darshan Meghani Shah, was born and educated in Kolkata. After attending the prestigious La Martiniere Academy for Girls, she completed her BCom from Calcutta University. She continued her love for academia after marriage and pursued a bachelor's degree in law and an MEP diploma from the Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. After her long stint with the corporate world, it was only upon returning to Kolkata after many years that she started working with handloom textiles, and her first opportunity required her to market well-curated exhibitions and handcrafted collections. Through this initial foray, she decided to start Weaver Studio. In December 1993, Weaver Studio was set up in Kolkata with the mission statement, "Use as many hands as possible." Young women from different stratas of society were employed and trained in the language and aesthetics of our rich textile heritage. Weaver Studio has dedicated itself to working intensively and extensively at the grassroots level with craftspersons, museums, and experts. Rangeen was the production and job working unit set up 1 year after Weaver Studio was inaugurated, and hand block in screen printing, hand weaving, value-added textile techniques such as batik, shibori, clamp, felting, embroideries were undertaken for in-house as well as to support to the export businesses. Veda Commercial Private Limited, the export arm of Weaver Studio, was started in December 1993 with the mission statement, "Taking India's rich textile heritage, culture, techniques and arts to the world," and has given fresh impetus to hand-spun, hand-woven, khadi, jamdani, natural dyeing, hand-block printing, kanta, chikankari, applique, and shibori. Weaver Studio Center for the Arts was inaugurated in 2007 as a non-profit trust with a mission statement, "Garnering talent and nurturing creativity," to promote all performing and non-performing arts. The center is a multi-purpose space for exhibitions and creativity in all its forms. Weaver Studio Resource Center works with the mission statement because everybody deserves their happily ever after, and has adopted a cluster of 9 villages, initiating development work that includes providing basic amenities like clean water, sanitization, healthcare, educational facilities, and vocational training to the women and children in the area. A textile study center has been set up to promote awareness of our vast textile heritage, having a collection of 1,250 rare and old textiles and a library of 2,000 reference books. At the center, projects with special emphasis on revival of traditional textiles and textile cluster development are undertaken. After an extensive research and revival project on Baluchar silks of Bengal, the Weaver Studio Resource Center has now initiated work on textiles of undivided Bengal. This was one introduction that I did not want to rush through and really go in detail, because there's just so much of beautiful work that Mrs. Darshan Shah has done. And without further wait, let's allow Mrs. Darshan to transport us into an erstwhile era, which we can only hear about, and the new beautiful world of warp and weft and the magical Baluchari. Over to you, Mrs. Darshan.
Thank you very much. A lot of it that you said, I think I've just forgotten over the years. It's been a very, very long journey of almost 30 years. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to Akhila ji, thank you to Rupa for taking the time and the initiative to put this program together. And thank you to my very dear friend and relative, Hema Kona, for thinking about this project. Because she's very much involved in many of the projects that we do or the travels that we do. So thank you very, very much. For this project, what I did was that I thought that because it is it's a textile which has a lot of very, very interesting motifs. It has a lot of variety of booties and motifs and designs and colors and history. And the narrative is so beautiful that I thought it would best be that if I make it into a presentation, it will become also a documentation, and one could use it in education for an educational purpose for a longer time. So what we did is we put together a slide presentation which starts with the history and brings you right up to what we are in the current status with the Baluchars. So I'll request my colleague Kavita Patel, who is right here with us, to help me with screen sharing and to start the presentation. And at any given point of time, if anybody feels that they would like to ask us to stop and ask a question, you're most welcome to. But at the end of this 25-minute or half an hour presentation, we will also have time to have a Q&A, and we'd like you to be asking as many questions as you like and interaction. Hopefully, I'll be able to answer most of your questions. The ones that I'm not very sure of, I'll definitely get back to you in time to come. So thank you very much once again for inviting us to make this presentation. It's a pleasure and a privilege. So the first slide just tells you and shows you the terracotta. Can we go back, Kavita, for a second? The first slide is just telling you that these were woven narrative silks. If you go to see in all of India, very few textiles have a narrative. So these textiles from Baluchar had a narrative, and they were made in silk, and their iconography had influences from various places. One of them being the terracotta temples of Bishnupur, which are very, very famous, and many of you may have been to it. So we'll go to the next slide and we'll continue. So the history of Murshidabad, as it's given here, the main textile history started approximately in 1704 when Murshid Quli Khan, who was the Mughal governor of Bengal, he shifted his capital from Dhaka to Maqsudabad. This whole area was known as Maqsudabad along the river Bhagirathi, and Maqsudabad later came to be known as Murshidabad. So in 1704 is the first time that we see that Murshid Quli Khan has come and settled in Murshidabad, and he has brought with him lots of weavers and cooks and craftspeople and all of them. And already in this area, in where there were zamindars of Bengal were there were Jain merchants, there were bankers, and there were many, many other people who had settled not only from Banaras and Gujarat, but who had settled from many other places, from Rajasthan also, into this area because it was along the river and it was extremely rich in its silk industries. And the trade prospects here were really very good, and that's what attracted all these people to come and to be a part of this entire district. Baluchar has different processes. And the first of the processes that when you, the reason I'm not going to take it very slowly is because we have something like 70 slides. So in case anybody wants me to stop at a particular slide and explain further, please just raise your hands and Rupa could unmute them. So in the processes, we have the graph making that happens first. So first what happens is one makes a graph. When one makes a graph and draws a design, the graph maker draws the design to perfection, fills in the colors, fills in the squares, and then takes it to a card cutter. So all of this was happened while we go to this this process form. I would like to take 1 minute to explain to you that earlier Baluchars were woven by Naqshbands. Naqshbands were people who who did their design on graphs, but they translated it onto very fluid looms called the draw looms, called the Jala looms. And in this Jala looms, there was a lot of flexibility of design, but this required mastery. This required extremely detailed science, the knowledge of mathematics and knowledge of the textile itself and the counting. So we find that the Jala loom came from Persia and it was being used in Bengal and in Banaras. But over a period of time, when the Baluchar means, when you say Baluchar, Balu means sand and Shore means banks. So Baluchar was on the banks of the Bhagirathi river, and we really don't know. There are two theories to why and where Baluchar disappeared. The first theory is that maybe the river changed course and the village went underwater, and later after some time it came out into another district called Bishnupur, which is a part of Murshidabad. And the second theory is that as the patronage changed, as the areas changed, as the trade changed, as the iconography was further away, as the river changed its course, Baluchari lost its glamour and its importance. And the silk industry of Murshidabad, which makes Malda silk, had also lost its some bit of importance. That is when we find that the Jala looms kind of reduced, and they were no longer in use. And what we see here at the moment, one slide back, Kavita, what we see here at the moment is that after graph making, Kavita, one slide back, thank you. After the graph making, you start doing the card cutting. Here too, you can see that there is a metal plate which has many holes in it, and the person who is a great expert is the one who goes along the graph. So when there is a graph paper, he takes literally a line at a time and counting the design. You can see on the right side of your screen that the holes are punched as per the designs. These are called jacquard punched hole cards, and these are very specialized. Today we only have about 3 card punchers left in Bishnupur, and we have only one really good graph maker because things have got computerized, and in the process of computerization we also have lost a lot of hands, and we've also lost a lot of the very beautiful decorative motifs because they become more static when you put it on the computer. So we'll go to the next slide. Once the cards are ready, the next slide please, Kavita. Yeah, once the cards are ready, they're kept aside. In the meantime, what has happened is that the silk cocoons are boiled, and one slide at the back please. The silk cocoons are boiled and the yarn is taken out. A slide back please, thank you. Keep it till I tell you change. Then the yarn is spun. You can see the woman, one of the oldest women there, who's spinning the yarn. And after spinning the yarn, they put it on the spindle and they put it for dyeing. After it's made into hanks and dyed, it is spun on the spindle as well as made into hanks as well as put in reels, so that there are 3 purposes to it. Number 1 is for the warp, number 2 is for the lacing, and number 3 is for the weft weaving. Next please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here you see that there is a loom on your, can we go back, please? I'm sorry, this is going to happen a little bit because of the computer's movement, the slide movement. It's a PDF presentation. So you can see on the right, there's a very old loom which has got cards. It's got the yarn, and the lacing has been done as per the design that has been put from the graph to the card. On the left-hand side, you see a Jala loom, which is more like a hand loom. And it has no cards. It has a graph which is at the bottom, and it has threads which are then placed in a way and mathematically put together so that the weaver, when he weaves, there's a lot of flexibility, and that's called the Jala or the draw loom. Next, please. So we have 2 kinds of looms that are weaving the Baluchars. We have currently Jala looms only present in Banaras, and we have the jacquard looms in Bishnupur. The techniques which are very important in this, that there are 2 techniques of weaving the Baluchar. One is the Chalani. The Chalani is a weaving technique that leaves floating threads. If you see the arrow that is showing you and you see the border, you will see that it is not distinct at the back. This is the back portion that we are showing you. So you can see the front is very clear, but the back is not clear because it has floating threads. This technique is called Chalani. We also have this kind of a technique in Banaras where they leave the floating threads at the back. And the other technique is called the Golani technique. And in the Golani technique, what happens is that you can see the cleanness is because all the floating threads are used in supplementary weft, and the weaver has the upgraded looms of about 400 hooks. The Chalani is woven on about 250 to 300 to 320 count hook looms, and the Golani, which is the intricate weave, which is the weave where all the threads at the back get interlocked. This is called the Golani system, where you need high expertise. The looms are much heavier. They've got 400 hooks, and they're required to have weights on both sides, which are called the lingos. And these weights help the threads to stay tight. And when the weaver weaves, it's really, really very, very tiring. So nowadays you find that when we revive this technique of the Golani, we find that most of the weavers are requiring 2 people to pull when the weft is being done, you know, to pull the wooden band to tighten the threads. They require 2 people because of the weights that are put and the weight of the loom as well as the tightness of the threads. Next. Also, one difference between the Chalani and the Golani is that in the Chalani system, you require 7 to 10,000 cards, whereas in the Golani system, you require 30 to 40 to 50,000 cards. The Chalani has basic designs. It doesn't have very intricate or multi-layered designs, whereas in the Golani system, it has multi-layered, intricate designs and more threads and twill weaving. So therefore, it requires far more cards and far better expertise. So these are the 2 techniques, and obviously because you can see the difference, the Chalani saris are there in the markets in bulk, and the Golani saris are there in hardly one into like for every one Golani sari, there could be 25,000 Chalani saris. That's the kind of difference that there is. We might have 200 weavers at the moment in Bishnupur, but out of which only 5 or 7 are doing Golani, and the rest of the 185 or 90 weavers are doing the Chalani. So you still see that the maximum baluchars that you see are of a very different design, that is of the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Shakuntala, and taken from all our epics. Whereas if you go to the museum designs, and if you go to the collections, private collections, whose collections are more than 150 years old, you will find that the designs were completely different. They were in the Golani style. They were in a Malda silk. Today, the silk has also changed. It's become Bangalore silk. So nowadays, they use warp Bangalore and weft Malda. But now, for the cheaper saris, they use the Bangalore silk in both the warp and the weft. In between, as you know, the Chinese silk had become very cheap. So Chinese silk was also being used, and you found this strange colors and strange shiny material that was there, and you know, slippery material. So that was all because it was Chinese silk, and it wasn't spun locally. It was all ready, it came ready-made, and so you saw the difference in the quality. Now I'll take you to what the actual design and composition of a baluchari is. The design of a baluchari follows a certain rhythm, a certain system, a certain set way in which each baluchari is designed. It's like a chart, it's like a map, it's like a graph, it's like a already kind of conceived idea and a discipline that has been put into the design and composition of a baluchar. So as you will see, it has all the baluchars in the central motif have the paisley or the kolka. In Bengal, they call it the kolka. In Banaras, they call it the ambi. And in English, they call it the paisley. And they had these motifs where the influence came from Persia, from Banaras, from Bangladesh, from the undivided Bengal, from Bengal and all the places. So when you look at Banarasi, you will find paisleys, similar paisleys. When you look at the baluchar, you will find similar, you will find these paisleys. And when you look at the jamdanis also, the old jamdanis, you will find paisleys. So paisleys was a very common motif, whether you use it in the central architectural palla or you use it as konias. So you see over here, either you have one paisley or you can go up to even 12 to 14 paisleys, depending on the card cutting and the graph designing. Normally around the paisley came a border. So it tied up the central area. The central architectural courtyard area was tied up with a border. This border had an intricate design. After that came the architectural part, which was the figurative part. Most of the times there was only one figurative square motif which was repeated all around. Sometimes you find in the older saris or the rare saris, you find a 1.5 meter long palla with more than 2 to 3 types of iconography in the squares, in the tiled kind of architectural, figurative, decorative motifs that come around the paisley, and we'll show you some examples later. And besides that, a border ran right through. So you see that the border comes at the end of this on both sides of the sari, like today, like any saris that you have, it has a border that is running. This border is also used to close the palla. So the architectural design is closed with that same border that is normally used in the entire border of the sari. And the central area was always had motifs. It could have heavier motifs, it could have lighter motifs, it could have single thread color motifs, it could have multicolor, it could have meenakari. So the base of the sari could have any kind of motif. It could have booties, it could have peacocks, it could have elephants, it could have deer. So you find a lot of saris over a period of time have a lot of different influences and motifs that have come from different, inspirations. Next, Kavita. So we can show you some of the motifs here. A woman is smoking a hookah, or a man and a woman have gone out or are sitting out, and one person is holding a flower, the other person is saying something or holding something else. Then you have the elephants, you have the deer, you have the zamindars. And here I must say that earlier they would try to distinguish between Muslim motifs and Hindu motifs and other motifs. But we find that it was not necessary that people who smoked the hookah or people who rode the elephants were necessarily Muslims or Hindu, etc. The only time that we could say that the textile was Hindu is when we looked at the calligraphy textiles which had the Ramayana or the Vishnupat or the chants that were woven into the Ramavalis. There you could call it Hindu. But otherwise, a baluchar you could not really distinguish and call it Hindu or Muslim, because the Hindu women and men were also encouraged to smoke the hookah and to even bring their own hookahs to the parties. And they would have been given a separate space where they would set up the hookah space, for them to smoke. So it's not that it's Hindu motifs or Muslim motifs or Persian motifs or any other specific religious motifs. It was just the iconography that happened to be influenced by what was going on at that time. The British came, the French came, Portuguese, the Dutch, the Zamindars, the Mughals, the people from Dhaka moved, wars happened, differentiations happened, the river changing its course, the traders coming in, influences coming when the traders brought in material. And so the material culture of the Baluchar is extremely, extremely rich, because it has imbibed from many of its influences over the last 250 to 300 years. It's been a textile which has been very accepting, and you can see the large variation. This is the Namavali, which is in the National Museum, and here you can see that you have Sri Ram and Krishna's thing written, or you will find Hey Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So we have different textiles which give different kind of chants, and these were known for them being Hindu textiles because they were basically influenced by the Vishnu sect of people, and that is what they used to follow. This is in the collection of the Weaver Studio, where we had 320 boxes. Each box, you can zoom in, Kavita. Each box says, Kavita, if you can zoom in, then I can read it for them. Yeah. This is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And this is the feet of Vishnu. And you will see the motifs, the iconography of the lotus, the leaves, and etc. are also different from what you see in the saris. this could have been used, or this could have been commissioned for either the priest or it could have been commissioned for the zamindar to use, or somebody who's going to be praying and representing the family in the temple. So these were the Vishnupads, or you would call them the Namavalis, and we find a large collection in the National Museum. We find a large collection with the Tapi collection in Surat, and we find this one piece in our collection. And these were very interesting textiles that were woven in that area. Any questions so far? Anybody wants to ask a question, or should I continue? Continue, Rupa? Oh, you're muted. Okay.
Continue.
All right, continue. Next, Kavita. So then you came to the signed baluchars. What is very interesting is that even 200 years ago, they had a great respect for these masters. They wanted that these masters should put their name, should be recognized, should be known, should be honored, should be respected, should be people should be able to read their names and go to their homes, or people should be very proud to buy a sari. Like today's day and age, we buy an artwork. Many of us buy an artwork looking at the signature more than looking at the art. Similarly, in those days, people would look for these master weavers. So we in the Tapi collection found about 10 master weavers and the signatures, out of which Dubraj Das was the most famous weaver, because he wove all his saris on the Jala loom. He was a Jala expert. His story is that he was basically a leather worker. From being a leather worker, he got interested and went into the construction work, after which he came into liking to do textiles. So his journey was amazing. He was not from a family of weavers. He did not inherit any of the skills, but he was born with this kind of a skill and interest, and it was a God-given skill. So he was one of the last weavers who died in approximately 1903 or 1904, who used to weave on the Jala loom. And he was one of the first people who started signing his name. He was actually from Bahadurpur, but we don't know why or when, or why was it that he signed that this is the signature that says that it's his name. Kavita, if you can zoom in Bengali, but I'll read it for them. It's Sri Dubraj. It's ulta, because they took all the correct motifs, and then the sari was, the signature was like that. It's Dubraj Das, and it's written Mirpur. But we don't know how Mirpur came into being, because he was always from Bahadurpur. So it may be that he moved, or maybe it was commissioned by somebody in Mirpur, and so they wrote the name, but it was Sri Dubraj Das and Mirpur. That was what was written in calligraphy form. So you find it extremely interesting when you, if you had seen any of our Baluchar exhibitions, what we had done is that we had an entire section for signed Baluchars. So can we show the next slide, please? And Dubraj Das was very famously known for his flower pots. So if you see any of Dubraj Das's saris, you can recognize it not only by the signature, but because of the design, which he was, you can see on the left the design. He was very famous for the flower pot design. So if you go back one slide, I'd like to show Dubraj Das's sari again, the distinctness of the saris. His saris were not figurative. His saris were one would say that Muslim weavers were famous for weaving non-figurative saris. So his saris were non-figurative. And this was the flower pot motif, which he was made very, very famous. So people, when they see the flower pot motif, they immediately relate it to Dubraj Das. So this was one of the things. And also to tell you a small distinction was that lots of the Muslim weavers were, because of their religion, not willing to weave saris that were which had figurative motifs, which had men, women, animals, etc. So you find in a lot of the baluchars there were no figures. You would find that they had the traditional, like what today you would see a Banaras, but they were actually woven in baluchar in the Malda silk with those motifs and the dyes and colors, and in that kind of graphing and design detailing. And they had basically no animal motifs and no human figures. So we'll show you a couple of those also. Next, Kavita. So like you see over here, so this is in the collection of Weaver Studio. Here you see a very interesting thing is that you will see that there are almost 9 kalkas. So you would see that starting from one paisley, it can go on to almost 14 paisleys. We've seen the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is very common. And here we find that there are nine paisleys. And after these 9, you also see the corners are actually 2 paisleys interwoven and forming a detailed motif. This kind of detailed motif was late 18th, early 19th century. And these konyas you also find reflected in jamdanis. And you find it reflected even in the old Banarasis. So you see there is a lot of relation. There's a lot of comparative that you can work on between Baluchars, Banarasis, and Jamdanis. So that's for another time session, but we'll continue with this.
Mrs. Darshan, if I may interrupt, there are a couple of questions which may be relevant
Yes.
at this stage.
Yes. Yes.
A question from Mrs. Haima Sundaram asking if we can identify the origin of the paisley motif, and from Ms. Devarati Datta asking if Das's fascination with the flower pot may have been influenced by the Victorian aesthetics.
Yeah, it could have been, because let me take the first question. So the first question, can you just repeat it for me? That the paisley, how further back?
The origin of the paisley.
The origin of the paisley was definitely Persia, and we all know that. And we used to see this kind of, this makes the paisley. And if you take color and you stamp it, this is how the first paisley came to be known when they did hand block printing. So paisleys basically are said to have come from Persia. And when the traders and when the karigars came to India and they settled in Banaras or Surat or other places, you found that the paisley evolved in different ways, looking at the influences also of the local iconography that they could see, whether on temples, whether in other things that were there, material culture that was around, architectural culture that was around, socio-economic, political culture that was around. Maybe even in the Kathas, you can see that influence. So different influences have brought to light many textiles where the paisley is very prominent. Like you can see over here, that on the left hand side, the purple paisley is a paisley inside a paisley, and the edge of the paisley, what you see, the flower, you see today in so many of, not today, but you see it in the old Baluchars. This flower is held by the zamindar or the nobleman, and this flower is being given to the woman. So you see so many times the iconography has these influences. So you see there's a 1 paisley, there are 3 paisleys, there are 6 paisleys, there are 10 paisleys. This one has basically, it's a 19th century, and it had 14 paisleys. We weren't able to show you the whole image, but you can see in the second one, in the pink in the pink background paisley, you can see that, Kavita, before that, if you can highlight the one with the horses, paisley with the horses. So when there were artists who had a very good imagination, Kavita, back by 2 slides, 1 more slide back. Yes, thank you. So you could see they had different kind of mindset, or a different kind of, they came from a different art world. You could see that there was this elephants on 2 sides, there was these horses on both sides, and the whole motif is extremely decorative. It is not static, it is not as if it's taken from somewhere. It's something that the artist himself has created. So you do find these differences also. And what the lady said about the influence of the flower pot, yes, definitely European influences. You could see that Dubraj's designs were influenced by the British, or maybe the French, the Danish, the Dutch. They all came to Murshidabad, they all came to Bengal, and all of them influenced in some way or the other. And in a later time, we also find, like what we are studying currently is the textiles of undivided Bengal. And here we find the number of influences that have come from the different people who came to be here from the East India Company, not only from the East India Company and the British colonial times, but way back from the 14th century Portuguese, 1498, the Portuguese coming, to the time that the French and the Danish and the Dutch came, to the time that the East India Company came, then the Bengal presidency happens, and then you see the Satyagraha movement, and then you see independence, and then you see the division. So at every stage, at every point, there have been influences, whether it was war influences, it was trade influences, it was migration, it was movement, it was temples, terracotta, it was material culture. You find these influences from Kashmir shawls also. And today's day and age also, you find that the biggest patrons of the Kashmir shawls in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries were those zamindars of Bengal. First it was the Mughals, then it was the zamindars of Bengal. So even today you find that there are thousands and thousands of Kashmir shawls that come out year on year from Bengali zamindar families. And they probably own the maximum number of Kashmir shawls because they were large patrons, and these shawls found their ways. These shawls also influenced because all the shawls, Kashmir shawls, had these kind of paisley motifs. So am I answering the question okay? Is the answer satisfactory? Or we could research more and come back also?
I think you can proceed, Darshan.
Okay. All right. So here we are showing you a number of saris of different, which is very important to show you the architectural. So can you see there is a similarity in the architectural setting, how each sari was set, whether it was one paisley, and then this one is very special because it has a different floral ground. Then comes the border, and then comes the motif, then comes the figurative motif. Similarly, in the next sari, you find 3 paisleys, a border which goes around, and the motifs. And sometimes we even found that they have upturned and used the elephant the other way around. You know, it's like because it's a mirror image, they haven't turned it around, and the graph maker or the person who set the loom may have not noticed it. So sometimes you've seen very unusual, one-of-a-kind saris where you have an elephant which is straight on the top and it's reversed at the bottom. And then you wonder what happened to it. So there have been a lot of errors that we've also found in design, but that would happen because of the fact that in those days, there were, I mean, of course, they were master weavers, but they also did make mistakes. So we find that that very interesting in some of the saris. We haven't got those saris here, but maybe we'll send a couple of pictures across to you and you can put it up for your group. Yeah, Kavita, next. So you have the socio-economic and political influence, like I said. You see them in the boat, you see them on the train, you see them in the jungles, you see them sitting, and the flower that I was talking about, you can see it in the red motif. You could see that the end of the paisley had a flower. This flower seems to be that same flower. The design, the details, the number of petals, etc. And you could see that a woman is smelling it, or a man is, or a hookah. A woman is having a hookah, or a man is having a hookah, or a hunter is there with the lion. So you found that whatever you saw every day is what you actually created in your design. So this is how you see all these different various motifs and designs and socio-political economic influences that happened at different points of time. The traders would come by boats, so the boats were an influence. The kings would, the Maharajas and the Zamindars would be sitting in a particular way, holding fort, or the Mughals had a certain way of dressing, or you can see the falcon, the Zamindar holding a falcon. So these are all the royal motifs that got incorporated into the Baluchar. If you see the paisley in this particular red sari, if you can zoom it, Kavita, a little bit more, you can see the intricacy of the paisley. This paisley, look at the intricacy. It is like a Kashmir shawl. If you see the intricacy of this and you go and take a magnifying glass and see it, you will see that how many motifs into design have gone into one paisley. And it's got the flower pot at the bottom, the paisley is coming out of the flower pot, and the shape, the inner design, all of it has a lot of Kashmir influence. So we'll even show you later a comparative. We haven't put it here, but we should have put in a comparative of a paisley shawl with a paisley of the Baluchar. We would do that for one of our.
In this particular motif, we see 4 different colors. Is that more to do with the image that has been recorded, or is there a difference in the Western?
No, that is not necessarily with the image. What happens is that these weavers would weave, you know, they never thought that it's going to be have to be equal. Okay, they never thought they had to be equal. So the central part was always a very creative part. So most of the baluchers you see have 2, 3, 4 colors and not necessarily in the same rhythm. So you may have a one out of the 5 paisleys, you have one which is green in color. The rest are have got the muga and red. So it's not necessary. Sometimes, according to the book Sahib Bibi Nawab, which I was reading, says that sometimes nazar nahi lagne ke liye, like we say today also, they would put one as a different color. So maybe they had it in those days also. I'm not sure, but yes, that's a good question. That yes, they did use all different colors. They used.
Someone was also asking if they used German dyes because one of the row had an inverted motif.
Yeah. Not German dyes, but they used chemical dyes which came from maybe initially from Germany, but then were available here. So definitely it was not in natural dyes, but the saris that were very, very old and found were definitely in natural dye. What you see in some of the Tapi collection and the National Museum and the Craft Museum collection, and you see a wonderful textile which is in the collection of Kavita. Can you remind me the Sanskriti Museum? That sari has Vande Mataram as inscribed in the entire calligraphy in the entire sari. It must have been woven during the Quit India movement. So it has Vande Mataram, which is woven in the entire sari. And that is there in one of our books. We published it in our catalog, which came out with the first exhibition that we did in Kolkata. So we'll show you our catalog also. So here you can see that
Darshan, just one moment. In the previous slide, there was one row that was inverted, and someone's asked a question also. So was that unintentional? Was that a mistake?
Yes.
Like what you mentioned earlier with the elephants?
Yes, it was a mistake because they just did it as a mirror image. You know, when they laced the looms, they took the cards on the top and they reversed the cards at the bottom. You know, so they shouldn't have done that. They should have laced it directly. Straight. But sometimes, like we have the mirror image, they've done a mirror image not realizing that the entire figure has gone other way around. Like I told you about the elephants also, you know, that it's turned around. So it's a mistake. It's not that they wove it like that. No, because you'll find 95 saris perfect and then you'll find 5 have mistakes. So obviously that wasn't the rule, it was the exception.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darshan. You can proceed. Thank you.
Yeah. So here you can see that there's half a paisley. You know, it's not even a full paisley. So in that one, that person could have just put one. Now we don't know what made this person do half a paisley plus a small little baby paisley, which was between the 2 paisleys, a small motif. And you can see all of them smoking hookah. You know, all of them are in the thing. And if you go today to Murshidabad and you go to Kadkola Palace and you go to some of these palaces, the entire, Kavita, zoom, I'd like to show them. So the arches that you see in these saris are exact arches and architecture that you see at the palaces and the Zamindar homes in Murshidabad even today. If you go to Jiaganj and Azimganj and you go to Murshidabad and Hazardwari and you go to that entire area, you will see the arches exactly like this. You will see temple arches, palace arches, and you'll see the Jain temple arches, the terracotta temple arches. The arches are following a certain pattern. So you can see all of these hookah smoking gentlemen are in that typical arched backdrop. And this is an unusual sari because it has this kind of, this is an architectural piece because it is a 1.5 meter. It has got a 1.5 meter palla. People were wondering in those days, and we still haven't got an answer to this, is that was it because the Gujarati people wore Siddha palla? But then we had a question that the Gujaratis didn't wear silk because they believed in ahimsa in those times, and these were Jain traders. Then why was this? Who wore these pallas? Because if the Bengali wore it, it would get hidden. The main paisley architectural design would get hidden. And if you put it at the back, then it doesn't show at all. So what was this? What was the reason for doing something like this? So we've not really pinpointed on the reason. Different historians have and different experts have different things to say. And they say that this was woven as a cloth first. This design must have been woven as a cloth, which is a wrap cloth. So you may have used it for gifting silver or books or anything, you know. So maybe they were used to gift from the zamindars to the kings, the maharajas, to the British, you know, the generals, the other people who came to Murshidabad. But we don't know why such a sari would exist, because, and who would be wearing it or who commissioned such a sari, which had 1.5 meter palla. Today's day and age, yes, because it's very stylized. But in those days, the Jain community, which was made up of the Marwaris and the Gujaratis, would not have worn a silk in the first place. And if they did wear a silk, then this defeats the purpose of the way the sari was woven. Of course, this is in the Tapi collection. It's a masterpiece. And it's one of the rare architectural, completely follows an architectural design. This one is at the National Museum. Here you can see now that the body has different kinds of motifs coming in. Earlier you had the typical motifs of either it's a round booty or a one paisley or a stylized small booty. But here you're finding that it's now crisscross of the booty. So you're finding that design is changing. Again, you're finding that in the earlier sari that you saw, which had the Kashmir influence, here also you can see the Kashmir influence in the palla. So you can see that influence, but at the same time, you can again see the zamindar. I mean, you can again see the hookah smoking person. So you see that the architectural design is kept consistent. So it's the paisley, then the border, then the motif, what do you call it? The figurative motif, and then the body of the sari. This is in the National Museum, and we had shown it during the Delhi exhibition. This is a sari depicting a mother and child. So if you can zoom in, we'll show you this. So it has a, yeah, if it can be a little more, they might be able to see it. Are you able to see a mother and child? Can you zoom in a little more? Is it possible?
No, it's not possible.
Oh, it's not. I'm so sorry. So this has a thing also where you see that the paisleys are alternating in color. So you have 6 paisleys, they're alternating in color. And you also have everything in the palla which is alternating in color. So you can see that there is a design systematic way of weaving this, where the jacquard has been and the jala has been, the design cards or the design counting has been done in a way where you have one is color, one is white, one is color, one is white. Whether you talk about the paisley or you talk about the border, the first border is yellow, the second border is white. The first motif, the mother and child, one is yellow, one is white. So here you see even in the body, one line is, one motif is white, one is yellow. So you see this consistency in the entire sari, where they've used a combination of actually 3 to 4 colors. The jameen has 1 color and the weaving has 3 colors. And here they've used the twill weave as well as the meenakar. So it's a combination of different techniques. And again, this is at the National Museum. It was not in a very good condition, but it was conserved and shown. So now we come to a very interesting question, that why were and why are baluchas being woven in Banaras? So here we find that after the passing away of Dubraj Das in 1903, the jala technique was lost to the weavers of Bengal. So they moved to the technique of the jacquard. Now, when Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay, Justine Dhamija, and all of them, they wanted to revive and wanted to work towards the Festival of India's collection, they came to Bengal. They met with Ruby Pal Chaudhary, who's been for the last 50 years. Now she's a chairperson emeritus, but she's been otherwise 50 years secretary and heading the West Bengal Crafts Council. And they came to her, and one slide before, Kavita, I'm still speaking. A slide before. Yeah, and so they came to her and they asked her to weave a certain baluchar which was there in the museum collection, maybe of Craft Museum, which Kamla Devi brought with her. This was taken to the weavers in Bishnupur, but they had already started weaving the jacquard and they had lost all these designs because we were never good at documentation. So what happened is that all the old designs were never documented or kept in a particular way. Whatever we had was either preserved in the museums or in private collections where they didn't have access. The weavers didn't have access. And when the newer weaving generation came along, they started just listening to different stories like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Shakuntala, and they used to see that in the different pictures and motifs that were found in magazines and comic books, etc., and from their grandparents telling them these stories. And that's where they picked up that iconography from. So they didn't, and they used to do only the Chalani system. They had stopped doing the Golani system because they didn't have patronage, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the thing to have upgraded looms. There was no government support at that particular kind of time. The Zamindar system had been abolished. And so you found that what is it that they would do? So they just decided to weave the very ordinary Chalani system of weaving the baluchar and using Bangalore and China silk and selling these saris between 1200 and 2000 rupees. They used to do these saris. So imagine after graphing, lacing, getting the yarn and the majuri, what would they have earned? They really would have not earned, because in between there was the Mahajan also. So the Mahajan would take the saris and just give them a small amount for it. So we had different Mahajans in Bada Bazaar and in South Calcutta, these gaddis that you call, which used to sell these baluchars. So finally what happened is, because we couldn't weave it, we couldn't revive it in the 50s, this sari went to Banaras. They went to Banaras, and Kamala Devi took it to Banaras to a master weaver, and who was a President Award winner. Yeah, next slide, Kavita. Yeah, so they went to Kalu Hafiz, who was whose real name was Ali Hassan, but all of us knew him as Kalu Hafiz. And he was the master weaver who knew Naqshbandi. And he looked at the sari and said that, okay, let me give it a try. And that is how Banaras got its first baluchar. So when we talk about GI and when we talk about other things, which we will, we had to first understand that why did it go to Banaras? So this is the reason it went to Banaras, and this is one of the Banarasi baluchars, and these Banarasi baluchars became very popular in Bengal, and people like Ananda, you know, all you people who are much older would have heard about the shop called Ananda, the Crafts Council shops, and the Nandita Pal Chaudhary, Nandita Raja's shop, Kanishka, all these Indian Silk House, all these very famous shops started keeping the Banaras baluchars. So Banaras balucharis became very, very popular. But you can see that how systematic they are, how machine kind of look they are, because they too change from the Jala into practicing the Jacquard. So they would do partly in Jala, but mainly in Jacquard. But the question was that their technique that they used was not something that was from Bengal. Bengal didn't learn from Banaras, and Banaras didn't learn from Bengal. Whether it was language reasons, it was distance reasons, it was encouragement, it was facilitation, or whatever it was. But you find that they try to copy it, but there's a lot of staticness in it. So when you look at a Banaras baluchar, it has a lot of static feel to it. If you see a sari which is behind me, you know, just behind me, the flow, the feel and everything is different. It is not so much design, but it has the softness because of the Malda silk, because of the way it was treated, and because of the weavers of Bengal had the inherent kind of feel to that sari. You know, a geographic area has a certain feel. When you weave a paitni in Banaras, you can make out. And when you get a paitni from Paitan. Similarly, when you weave a sari in Jamdani in Bangladesh, it has a completely different flavor, even if it is in a higher counts to what Bengal is weaving today. The basic geometry moves, changes, understanding, the graph, the measurements, all of it changes. So here you can see different, this is from Chandra Jain, who's a very well-known Crafts Council member. And this is her sari that we had shown in the exhibition. And this was woven in Varanasi for by the family, and Chandra Jain had commissioned it. And this was also photocopied and made into a poster. So when you came into Mughal Sarai station, this is the first picture that you saw. So it became that popular. It became like a poster art also. So this is what you can see, that later people wanted to use it as wall hangings. People wanted to use it for different purposes because it had that different kind of architectural feel to it, a design feel to it. So we can go to the next slide. You can see the colors are also very harsh. Kavita, next slide.
Let's just got stuck just a minute.
Not an issue. I can continue to talk to them.
Well, if I may interrupt,
Yes.
for a layman, what would be the difference like between the Jala and the Jamdani? I mean,
Yeah, I'll tell you, for a lay person, when you look at a Jala made sari, it has a certain flow and softness to it, where the design is not like a computerized design. you know, like a clockwork. So you will see when you are I mean, not for a lay person, I don't know how well a lay person would know this, but if you even know a little bit about textile, you will be able to know the feel of it, and you'll be able to know the fact that it is not a repeat. It's like a non-repeat feel. Whereas when you do a jacquard, you fix it. You know, when you make a card, you're not going to be able to move the punches. So you fix the punches, you fix the yarn, you fix the hooks, you fix the warp. And then you just moving your weft and using your feet pedal, or whichever loom you're working on, whether you're working on the pit loom, or whether you're working on a supplementary weft loom, or you're working on a jacquard loom, which is a purely jacquard loom, you will find that doesn't require that kind of expertise. So today, many weavers have joined the jacquard is only because of the fact that once the loom is laced and you have the warp for 4 to 8 saris, you just have to do the weft. You don't have to really learn the expertise lies in each section: who's pinning, who's dyeing, who's lacing, who's cutting the cards, who's doing the graphing. Each person has its own expertise. But when it comes to just the wefting, that is not where you need your maximum expertise. So there you see that family members also come in and kind of are using the shuttle. You know, you don't find that only the master weaver sitting on it.
Thank you, Darshan.
Kavita, is there an issue with the thing?
No, I'm just going to that point because it got stuck, so we restarted.
Sure. So any other questions, or I can even continue talking on it. So after
take a question. There was a question.
Tell me.
Mr. Nilesh Gam has asked that I've heard of Baluchari sari with Ramayan Katha weaved in pictorial language. Is it true?
Yes, very much. We're going to show you those. So the current saris that you see in the market, which are produced in bulk, for every 95 saris that are woven in Chalani and in the design of the Ramayan, Mahabharat, Shakuntala, etc., there are only 5 saris which are woven in the old techniques and the old designs, which are the museum designs, or which have been influenced in many earlier, many years ago, in the 17th, 18th, early 19th century. So post that, you will find that after the 1930s, you only find these motifs. You only find the Ramayana, Mahabharata, and the Shakuntala, and such kind of Krishna with Arjun, the Bhagavad Gita. You find all of these motifs in these saris. That's why they're known as narrative silks, because they are narrating a story. So they are called narrative silks. And if there's any other question, or I can continue even otherwise without the slide.
You can continue, Darshan.
Yeah. So once this Banaras Baluchars happened, we saw that when it was 2015 that my daughter was getting married in January, and just before that I had been to Bombay to see the exhibition which was put up at the Prince of Wales Museum, and this exhibition was in collaboration with the Prince of Wales and the Tapi collection, which is owned by a Gujarati couple called Praful and Shilpa Shah, who own Garden Virelli saris, and they have probably the largest textile private collection in the country besides Calico. Calico has the largest, but if you look at the private collections, which are not really in museum spaces but in their private spaces, Praful and Shilpa are hugely knowledgeable, and they had this huge collection which they showcased at, I think there were about 30 or 32 Balucharis, which they showcased at the Prince of Wales Museum. And I was thinking that I went to the market to buy a baluchar for my daughter, but I didn't see any of these designs. You know, I was like, and I hadn't dealt in baluchars earlier for some strange reason, because I think my sense and sensibility was always Japanese, you know, or always Jamdani, or was always Bengal handloom, but it didn't go to the baluchar side because of, I really don't know why. I have not really pinpointed on why. So I said that, but I've never seen this, so I bought that catalog. I bought this catalog, which is called Sahib Bibi or Nawab. What a lovely title. It's Sahib Bibi and Nawab. So I bought this catalog and I came back to Calcutta, and I started going to shops again, who I knew, the Baluchar shops. And I started asking everybody that I want a saris, like I want these kind of saris. So they said, what is this? They didn't even know they were Baluchars. They said, what are these? When I showed them the iconography of these kind of saris with elephants and hookah smoking people, etc. So they said these are very few that were woven at a particular time for some exhibition, but now they are not there. We don't weave these saris anymore. We only get this kind. So then I went to the Weaver Service Center. I went to various other places to see that how I went to Ruby and Ruby told me the whole story of why it was why it had again disappeared. And then I said that okay, if let the wedding finish and then let me start this research work. So it was just a dhunki pe, you know, that I went to Murshidabad, I went to Bishnupur, I went and met the weavers, I asked them, I showed them this book and they were like, we don't know, except that there is in Bishnupur Museum, there were saris, but they were not that old. They were after 1903. They were basically between 1920, 30, 40s, that where whoever could donate those saris are there in the Bishnupur Museum. But there were none of these kind of saris. So then I went to the government of West Bengal and they helped me from the MSME NT department and the department Tantuj, which is a famous Bengali sari shop, which has now almost 21 shops all over India. And they told me that, okay, present a proposal. So I presented a proposal to them. And then we brought in the Weavers Service Center because we needed technical support. And to get technical support of the Baluchar, we definitely needed people from the Weaver Service Center who had great experience with Banaras. So we got the person, and luckily the person who was heading at that time was extremely helpful. He was a Bengali gentleman in Banaras who was heading the Weaver Service Center. And the one that was heading here was from I think UP or Bihar. So we managed to get them on board. And we managed to go to Bishnupur and start studying all over again and looking at the temples, the designs, went to the Indian Museum, went to private collections, went and saw the Lady Ranu Mukherjee collection, which was open for a very short time at the Academy of Fine Arts, went to the National Museum, went to Sanskriti, went to Craft Museum. And that's how my journey started of this fascination. And I took a photographer and I photographed 500 Baluchars. You know, in a period of 1 year, I had 500 Baluchari saris photographed. Not only saris, but somewhere there were fragments like just the pallas or just a rumal left or just some bit of a border left. And from there started the project of how I could start it. So then we decided to start the looms. So first we started the looms. We started with 12 looms and Weaver Service Center basically took the responsibility. Some of the funding came self-funding. Some of it came from TAPI, which helped us do the seminar. And some of it came from the Birla Academy, which gave us the space and collaborated with us. And some of it came from the government. So we presented this exhibition in 2016, November, and it was a fascinating journey. Kavita, are we there?
Yeah, I'm just showing the current Baluchari. After that, please.
Show the current so we can then go back to the thing.
You can see this sari?
No, we cannot. No.
Why?
No, we can't see it.
You can't see it?
No, in fact, we have very nice, interesting slides coming up now. But anyway, yeah. See if you can see it. No, you can't see it.
Okay.
So anyway, so in 2016, we presented this exhibition. Continuous screen sharing. Yes, yes. So now the gentleman was asking, so here it is. Can you see Arjun? Can you zoom in? You can see Krishna, Arjun, the Rath, and the Mahabharat. The Varmala, and the border had a continuous story. So it had a continuous narration. Okay, next sari. Can you see again? But how garish they had become? All the kind of colors, combinations had all gone what local people would like. It was not really for the connoisseur anymore. Also the weight that keeps the border straight, they hadn't got the weight correct. So you will see that all the saris had some kind of a fold issue, like, you know, the warping issue, where you found that the sari is undulating. So it doesn't sit like a Kanjivaram border or a Banarasi border. So you'll see it in most of the saris that I'm showing you. And here you can see a figurative motif. Kavita, on the left, the yellow sari, please. One before. Yeah. Here you can see that there are panels. There are just border with the central panel. So this became like it changed. The architecture changed. Can you see there's no architecture in this? They didn't have the traditional architecture any longer. So they didn't document any of that, and neither did they have access to the museums or private collections So this is what happened, you know, the changes that happened were drastic, you know. Yeah, next. So this was the revival project, and this was the catalog that we came out with. And if any of you would like the catalog, do let us know and be happy to send it across. This has about 12 articles, which were written by, the papers were presented at the seminar, and it's the Weaver Studio Resource Center's initiative and publication. Next, Kavita. So this is how we worked. I already spoke about this. Next one. Yeah, so you can see our reproduction, what Weaver Studio has reproduced. This is a sari in our collection on the left. And on the right, this is what Chandra Jain has, but it was reproduced by us in Banaras, and she had bought it. And you see the one different color in the center, the green. But there is equality in the design, because you can see one after the other color changing. Or you can see the central motif and then the 2 and 2. And similarly, you can see in the design that is happening in the body also. Kavita, next. So these are the ones. What I did is that to teach students, students can't afford to buy the entire saris, you know. So we repeated these little motifs, which we then gave it to them with postcards, and they bought it for small amounts. So they would take home a memory. So we got all the iconography woven into. Okay, Achhe, I'll show you. So we wove like this. So then we recorded all the motifs. So each motif is different. So if you open it, you know, if you had other session or time, you can see that I've done 25 motifs in one textile. Then all the borders.
This you can show us when the spotlight is on you, because there is screen sharing. We won't be able to see the full screen.
Oh, okay, all right. So I'll show this to you later. Just remind me.
When the spotlight is on you, I'll remind you.
Okay, next one. So here we have Tantuj and Weaver Studio. These are all the revival saris. This is in West Bengal. This is also here. These are all the West Bengal saris. And we'll give you the names of all the weavers. This is something that you see behind me. And you can see each motif, like just go back. So we've tried to keep that. Go one back. So you can see there's one like Nazar Nahi Lagna. Yeah, so we've tried to keep that. Yes, Kavita? Yeah. So hands behind the weaves, we've given contact details of the master weavers. What we'll do is we'll give you a copy, but anyway, you're recording this so that in case you need to call them, you know, the lady who you saw was spinning was his mother. So all these people are weaving different baluchars.
If I may interrupt for the audience, if you want to like quickly note it down as the screen goes, we can do that too. You can quickly take a picture from your phone. That is easy too.
So you can go back.
If Kavita can go back and just pause for a brief bit, just calling the attention to everyone. If you want, you can take pictures of these contact numbers of the master weavers, who you can contact if you want your own baluchari.
We want that more and more people should get aware, and more people can go to the grassroots and work with them. Sometimes what happens is they may have a daughter or a son who's interested or who's in NIFT or NID, would like to go and do an internship also. This will really help them, because from time to time they need to revisit all that they otherwise can't, whether through the internet, whether to visit museums, whether to again look at color combinations or look at new markets or whatever. So we encourage always, whenever I make a presentation or people come to us, we give all direct contacts of all the weavers so that you can go to Bishnupur and you can work with them, and it's a wonderful journey for everybody. So this was the exhibition we spoke about. Yeah, Kavita, you can show it. I spoke to them about this seminar catalog. So this you can see, we set up the Jala loom and we designed this in a way that it makes it very interesting and creative. So we have a paisley at the back, and then we had the Jala loom, and we had the master weaver who came and worked on it. And we have all the draft designs on the wall, Kavita, yeah. On the wall here, we have all the draft designs, and we used all the charkhas, you know, where they spin the yarn. We had all the charkhas put up as a installation of a chandelier. It's made of charkhas. And we had a very well-known artist called Jayashree Burman, who looked at all these designs and motifs and created paintings from it. Her inspiration from the Baluchar. So we had an entire wall of her 18 artworks. Yeah, Kavita, next. So this is how it looked like. It was magical. As you entered, this was the architectural sari. We had this lady who you can see standing with the sari, which is in the collection of Weaver Studio, is wearing a Dubraj Das sari. So she had a Dubraj Das sari which she wore and she's a Marwari lady and she collected the Baluchars. So her name is Pushpa Kejriwal, and she has now sold her collection to the Tagore family. And we have one of her saris. We have this sari which we bought. And that's me with Aparna Sen, and Aparna is wearing her mother's sari. So she's wearing a Baluchar which has got that 1.5 meter palla, if you can see what I mean. Yeah, and she inaugurated it, and the second person who inaugurated on the next day was Munmun Sen and the ministry and somebody else from the Ministry of Culture. Yeah, next. So we collaborated with Anamika Khanna and Devar Neil and Rahul Mishra and many others, and we gave them different fabrics and different Baluchar yardages as well as saris, and whoever wanted whatever, and they had created an entire contemporary section of Baluchars. So this has not come out too well in photographs, but we hope that we'll improve on it, because we put this together in just 4 days, the whole presentation. So that was this was in New Delhi at the National Museum. Here we didn't get any support or whatever. So we managed to do it on our own, and along with the National Museum, we're the only 2 people who put together this entire show. And this book, The Baluchars, The Woven Narrative Silks of Bengal, this was edited by Jasleen Thamija. And this book has been shortlisted. We've been very fortunate and blessed, has been shortlisted by the Textile Society of America for an award. The award will be announced in October. So this is one of the books that we have, and we have a catalog and book. I'm not doing a sales pitch here, but they're really wonderful. And the catalog and book we have, which is at a very, very special price. So here we have the Baluchar book, and we have the catalog also. So if anybody would like to order it, you can do it online or whichever way you like. It'll be really nice that we get the books out to people, you know, for them to read. So this was the National Museum where we made the entire loom as an entry. Yeah, Kavita, next. And so this was done in a very different way, because the National Museum has different rules. So we couldn't put the weight on the sari, so you could see that slide. You know, you could see it's been put on a sliding format. And here it was an incredible exhibition and a seminar, and there was no place to stand in the hall. And Ritu Kumar did the launch of the book, and the World Crafts Council's head came and did us the honors of being present. So it was amazing. It was really amazing. As you can see, the halls are full, the table, everything. It was unbelievable that there was not one seat left in the entire auditorium for the seminar. Normally you find that in seminars, people leave in half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. The seminar started at 9:45 and it finished at 4:30. Not one person has moved except for their lunch. So it was really, really a very happy moment for us to leave our comfort zone of Kolkata and go to Delhi. Yeah, Kavita. So the GI. Now the question is the GI. The GI is the geographical indication that has been started by basically UNESCO and in conjunction with the different governments and craft bodies. And this is a geographical identification which is given to any particular textile or anything else. Even a basmati has a GI. and so that it is identified for that geographical region, and it gets an impetus and a label, so that people are more encouraged to go to that particular region to buy, instead of buying a Kanjivaram in Banaras, or buying a Banarasi in Paitan, or buying a patola, a double ikat patola in Kanjivaram, or things like that. They go back, they know where it's coming from, and they go back to that particular place, and they honor that textile made by the master weavers of that place. And that's the reason the geographical identification was given, by the fact that it's in this particular place, it's by the border is this river, it's got these mountains or no mountains, it's got this desert or water body or architecture or this temples. So an entire region was given this identification, and you would know that this is genuine Baluchar. So like you use the craft mark or you use the fair trade mark, similarly you use the GI. Now we really don't know whether the GI really helps, in the sense that how many people who come to buy Baluchar, maybe the Delhi, and in Delhi, if you're having a exhibition and you have Baluchars from Banaras and you have Baluchars from elsewhere and Bengal, how would even a GI mark make a difference? Because the customer will say, okay, I like this color, I like this design, I like the feel, I like the price. So should it matter where it comes from? Or can't it be that weavers could travel from one place to another, and maybe a weaver from Bengal has woven this in Banaras, or a weaver from Banaras has woven this in Bengal? So as of now, I don't know how much knowledge people have of GI, but maybe it's a good initiative, and in time to come, we'll know. So GI for Jamdani is also under kind of dispute, but now they've agreed that you can give GI to more than one area. So probably Bangladesh, as well as some areas of India, including West Bengal, will get the GI for the Jamdani. So this is where the GI issue stands. So that's the basic presentation. I haven't gone more into any other details, thinking that I could take questions and we could go forward from that. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Darshan. And I think I'll just take a look at the chat and I'll just go up. And in the meanwhile, there is somebody who would like to ask questions, please do put in the box, or just, just wave or something. Our member Divya is also watching out for questions. So first, I just go from the bottom. Mridula says, I have a beautiful sari which I love, and considering the motives which I learned from this webinar, I realized it may be a Baluchari. And a lot of them who are appreciating you for the presentation, and then each of the images you shared, and they're all like, it's wow, it's beautiful. And also there is a query on the catalog and the book. So if Kavita can just share the link on the chat box, whoever's interested can look that up. And as for the question, okay.
I'll share.
Okay, Nilesh has asked, for the silk yarn dyeing, which dyes were used for the hot pink Banaras Baluchar?
I'm not really sure of the hot pink Banaras Baluchar, but definitely these are chemical dyes. These are chemical dyes that are being used. Yes, the natural dyes that we are using is being dyed at our own unit, because they don't know how to do it. So at our own unit, we're dyeing everything in natural, where we cannot get this hot pink. What we are doing is that the only color that we're getting, which is really bright and nice, is the color that we're getting from lac. And that also we've had to mix and boil with manjishta in potlis, in muslins, and let it really boil to be able to get the color. And we have to pre-treat it in alum. If we don't pre-treat it in alum, the color runs away very fast. So we do have an issue with some of the colors, but the hot pink is definitely a chemical color. He can unmute himself.
Yeah, Nilesh, can you unmute? I think Nilesh.
Yes. Okay, good evening, ma'am. Very nice presentation. Yeah, I visited Patan in Gujarat, near Ahmedabad. So Patan da Patola is very famous sari right now. And there I came to know, because at that time, my visit was there at National Institute of Design, I visited this Patan da Patola Patan Weaving Center.
Yes.
One craftsman, he told me that they are using Cochinean insects.
Yes, they get it from South America.
Yes.
They get
So
from South America
if
and they're
you,
using those insects.
yeah, those insects, if you put it in water, then you get this hot pink. I was really wondered at that time, and
Yes. But being a Jain, I'm trying to avoid doing all such things.
yes, yes, that was issue there also, and then once again insect killing or animal killing, because once again in that case also, the silk cocoons, those are also you are killing that way.
No,
So
so the cocoons that I use personally, I'm not talking about the ones in Vishnupur because I don't own any of the looms. It's the government who has supported that entire project. But
yeah.
the cocoons that I'm using are the cocoons that have already died. So we use cocoons all died and they collect it. And there's only one center of mine which is weaving this, and a second center we've started now in Assam, which is doing the Ahimsa silks. So we're doing it from banana fiber, pineapple fiber, and other fibers, and trying to avoid using the cocoons, and especially the tussar cocoons of West Bengal, because we do a lot of tussar work. So we're encouraging our people now to change from that into the Ahimsa silk. But the Ahimsa silk doesn't catch color. So our issue with Ahimsa silk is how to process it better. So we are working on it, but we've not really reached the point where we get quantity. If I'm going for quality, there is no quantity. And the costings become very high. And like I said, like the GI, people are not interested in knowing that today if a Bengali comes to me, they are not interested because they're fish eating, mutton eating people. They're not interested in buying Ahimsa silk, which is 6,000 rupees more expensive than the normal tussar silk. So that education, that eco-friendly, that Ahimsa part of it, the killing part of it, like how you convert people to veganism, like that converting will take a bit of time, but there are people who are already becoming conscientious and they're wanting not to wear silk, but to wear only khadi, to wear hand spun, to wear linen, to wear alternate plant-based yarns.
Yeah, even colors also.
Yeah, colors also. Colors and yarns, yeah, both, definitely.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. Sorted.
Yeah.
Thank you. Since you have to keep with time, I'm just going to quickly rush everybody. So there was also a question from Mrs. Akila. If the design goes in detail on the card, like if the motifs are all punched in detail in the card.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they're all punched in detail and therefore they can't be moving. But if they were in the Jala system, then there would be a graph which is lying underneath. And then the weaver has the flexibility to move the yarn to make it more smooth and to make it more flowing. So he can change the stiffness of it and make it more graceful, if I can use that word.
Okay, so due to wanting to keep within time, I'm going to have to not take any more questions. On the chat box, there is a email shared, info@weaverstudio.in. So if any of you have queries, if I may take the liberty with Darshan, and can I share that you can send any queries to her, and I think she would be good enough to answer them.
Yeah.
No time. Yeah?
Tell them that we're going to leave the film on for them if they want to watch the film.
I'm going to say that, yeah. So I'm going to just quickly say my vote of thanks. For Mrs. Darshan, words cannot suffice to express the awe and the commitment and passion with the revival of textiles, and in particular Baluchari. You truly do inspire us. It is because of people like you that some arts and crafts and weaves of India, stand to be showcased to the next generation. So thank you so much, and you do inspire us greatly. My sincere thanks to our committee member, Mrs. Hema Kona, for facilitating this webinar, and to our dear members of the committee and all our members of Crafts Council of Tamil Nadu and from the other councils and other people that I see here with all your interesting questions and feedback. Thank you so much for being here. And for those of you who would like to know more about Baluchari, the history and the revival efforts taken, Prashant, can you share the link on the chats, please? Yeah, that the YouTube link that's been shared right there can be viewed at your time. This is a movie which has been produced by Kunal Basu and directed by Sanjeev Chowdhury, and the rights have been bought by Weaver Studio. It is about the history and the current status of Baluchari. So those of you who want to, take a good look at it, you can do it so in your time. Because of a lack of time, we are going to have to wind up the webinar. So thank you very much. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Darshan. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kavita. Thank you to Prashant too, Prashant and Kavita, who've been the technical backup for this webinar. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Good evening to everyone.
Thank you. Good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.